My mother abandoned me after giving birth to a son. Now that I am successful, she wants credit. I am a 29-year-old fashion content creator with a considerable following on social media. Recently, I did an interview with a new online local magazine where I exposed my family, and they're not happy about it. When I was 4, my mother abandoned me to live with her husband and son, leaving me with my aunt. My parents had eloped and were cut off by their families. My mother's family thought my dad, a farm worker, was beneath them. After 2 years of dating, they married and were completely estranged from her family, who moved away to avoid seeing her. When I was born, my father passed away in an accident 6 months later, and my mother lived alone with me. My dad's family supported her, but her own family never did. My mother eventually got a job in sales and left me with my aunt most of the time. She started dating a co-worker and married him 2 years after my dad's passing. He never bothered to build a relationship with me. When I was 3, my mom got pregnant and gave birth to my brother. Soon after, she announced she was moving away to be with her parents, leaving me behind with my dad's family because I reminded her too much of my dad. My grandparents and aunt fought with my mother, wanting to keep me but believing I needed my mother's influence. My aunt was too young to parent, and my grandparents were too old. My mother insisted my aunt adopt me, eventually choosing to terminate her parental rights and move away with her husband and son. My aunt believes my mother found it easier to abandon me because I was a daughter and she finally had a son, aligning with her conservative family values. I had many questions about my mother's absence, which were answered when I turned 16. My grandparents passed away when I was 13 or 14, leaving just me and my aunt. She was 23 when my mother left and has been my pillar of strength since. In the interview, I credited all my success to my aunt, who supported me in all my endeavors, paid for my college where I discovered my passion for fashion, and supported me when I quit my job to create content on Instagram. There was no money in it for the first few years, but my aunt believed in me. Now that I'm successful, I shared my story, not expecting anyone who didn't already know my situation to read or watch the interview. I was candid about my family, my struggles, and how my aunt and grandparents supported me. This did not sit well with my mother and her husband, as it painted them in a bad light. My mom and my maternal grandparents moved away, but many of their relatives still live here, which is how they found out about my interview with a local magazine. The interview exposed why my mother abandoned me, leading her family to shun her. Now, they want me to do damage control to protect their reputation because the story I shared is different from what they told everyone. My mother and her husband had claimed they left me behind because my grandparents and aunt were unwilling to let me go, saying I was too attached to them. They also said they didn't want to confuse me by dragging me into a custody battle after losing my father. My mother even lied about sending money to my aunt and trying to reconnect with me when I was 16, which never happened. She had been lying for 25 years, and her relatives are now cutting ties with her, even her own parents. My mother recently reached out to me on Instagram, not even bothering to call. She said she understood my feelings of betrayal, but airing our dirty laundry wasn't the way to behave. She was getting a lot of backlash and wanted me to do some damage control. Her audacity to act mad at me infuriated me. She abandoned me and was a terrible mother in person, so she had no right to demand anything from me. Instead of apologizing, I posted a screenshot of her message on my story without a caption. I wanted people to know my mother was a bad person. Soon, I received more messages from her, accusing me of doxing her, which was untrue. I told her that if she didn't want people to think she was a bad person, she shouldn't have acted the way she did. I explained that I had only shared my own experiences and childhood, and it wasn't my fault she looked bad. Despite her continued denial of responsibility, I started having second thoughts about what happened. I considered apologizing because I believe in using my platform for the right cause. However, I don't think my mother deserves an apology because her actions led to this exposure. So, am I the asshole for exposing my mother in an interview with the local magazine? Edit. I don't know why my relatives didn't contact me earlier. My mother might have told them that my dad's family didn't want them to reach out. Also, my mom's family never approved of her relationship with my father, which likely made them hesitant. Even now, I don't think they're upset about her abandoning me, but more about her failing to live up to some outdated expectations. What her relatives think isn't my concern. Though they are technically my relatives, I've never had any contact with them, so I don't consider them my family. My relatives, who still live here, haven't reached out to me. They've just used this as an excuse to hate my mother. It hardly matters what they think. But if my mother is using their hate to call me out for the interview, I suppose I have to consider it. Everything is confusing, and my mother's sudden contact after so many years is messing with my feelings. My aunt doesn't think I did anything wrong, and my friends believe the situation is more complicated than just my mother's hurt feelings. Ultimately, I have to decide for myself. Update 1. I've decided to stand by what I said in the interview. I'm not going to apologize or withdraw my statement. I was just sharing my experience and didn't intend to ruin my mother's reputation. The backlash she faces is her own fault, and I don't feel sorry about it. Many people, including my friends and followers, agree it's her fault. If I hadn't become successful and given that interview, she wouldn't have faced any consequences. She only reached out because her lie was exposed. I've blocked her on social media and posted a story asking my followers not to harass her. Despite this, she continues to harass me through numerous Instagram accounts and emails. I've told her that I'm not responsible for her situation and will not apologize or clarify anything. Update 2. 2 weeks after the interview, I received a legal notice that I was being sued for defamation. I lost my mind because I didn't mention her name in the interview, and telling the truth isn't defamation. My relatives figured out what happened on their own. I'm tired of the drama. I've spoken to my lawyer and we're going to respond. My aunt and I decided to give my mother one chance to retract the lawsuit to avoid legal proceedings. When we called her, she screamed at us, refusing to back down. My aunt advised me not to argue, so we hung up and blocked her number. It seems this will go to court, and my lawyer and I are preparing. My aunt has connected me with the lawyer who handled my custody case, which will be helpful. Update 3. My mother keeps sinking to new lows. The legal process has started, and we're trying to settle with a mediator. Since we live in different states, everything is conducted online. My mother goes feral whenever something doesn't go her way, and the mediator has had to end sessions early because of her behavior. Despite this, things are going in my favor. Today, my friends and followers alerted me to an Instagram account named Exposing My Username. For obvious reasons, I can't share my username, but I was shocked to see it. After seeing the Instagram account my mother created to defame me, I knew I had to take action. The account was filled with lies about me, including accusations that my grandparents and aunt insisted she leave me behind, and false claims about my appearance, such as getting a nose job at 16. The most infuriating post accused my father's family of isolating her during pregnancy and painted my father, his family, and even me as abusive. This contradiction only exposed her further, as it didn't align with her initial claim of leaving me with my grandparents out of care. People quickly caught on to her lies, questioning the authenticity of her posts, leading her to turn off comments. Predicting she would delete the account, I took screenshots of everything. These will support our counter-lawsuit for defamation against her. My aunt almost cried when she saw the posts, especially the lies about my father, who she said my mother had been deeply in love with. This hurt me too, as my aunt always spoke highly of him. Determined to hold my mother accountable, I filed the lawsuit. As soon as she was served, she dropped her lawsuit against me and begged me to do the same. She deleted the defamatory account, but I stood firm. I told her that further contact should be through our lawyers, as I wanted nothing to do with her. Despite her continued pleas, I remained resolute. It took 2 months, but the lawsuit is finally resolved. My mother and her lawyer put up a fight, dragging it out, but the truth prevailed. They paid a significant settlement, which, despite my success, was a meaningful victory. The unexpected positive outcome was that my brother reached out. He had heard conflicting stories from our family and, after learning the truth, wanted to build a relationship with me. We met for lunch, got along well, and despite the initial awkwardness, I believe we'll become good friends. Though the interview brought unforeseen challenges, it also opened up new opportunities. I'm happy with how things are progressing and will continue to share my journey.